Hey folks, we're about to get into the Civil War. We left off with John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. It's Monday and I forgot where it was. But we left off on John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Uh, we're about to move into the election of 1860 with Lincoln's election, and then the South. Several southern states, anyway, are going to secede from the Union immediately after his election, before he even takes office. So, but before we do that, though, I like to have sort of a side trip that we go on. And a lot of this stuff happened much earlier. We're going to start this story in 1834, but it spans all of the time period that we're going over right now. We're even going to get into the last bits of the class in the 1870s. But this is just kind of a cool sort of I don't know, it's an entertaining side trip, but it's also kind of neat to get away from all of the political machinations and the military buildup and stuff that we're getting into. If that's absolutely not your thing, this is something that'll hopefully lift your spirits, and it'll also be like, wow, what the heck is wrong with people? Because people are terrible, and they've always been terrible, and that's one of the big messages that I'm trying to get you to get in this class. That's an uplifting message, isn't it, huh? Anyway, um, most of you have heard of Phineas T. Barnum. You've heard of Barnum and Bailey Circus. Uh, everybody has had, probably, hopefully, Barnum's Animal Crackers from the grocery store. Those are fantastic, and we're going to get to know the name, or get to know the guy that's behind all of that stuff. Uh, Back in 1834, Barnum owned a small grocery store in Connecticut. It was just a small grocery store. He got in on some other side gigs. At one point, he was running a sort of a private lottery thing. Was making okay money, but then Connecticut banned private lotteries, and so he couldn't do that anymore. And so he moved to New York City, and he dabbled in show business and opened up a new store there. And it was going okay. A weird sound. Anyway, in 1835, though, so Barnum had already been dabbling in show business a little bit, but 1835, something really, really super cool and wild goes on. Um, there is something up there. Anyway, something really wild goes on. A friend of Barnum's told him that he owned a very, very extremely unique slave, and he owned part. He had a share in this extremely unique slave, and he was about to sell off his share of this person. It's kind of a weird thing to own part of a person. They must be very valuable and super, super unique. Um, and the friend told him that this enslaved person that he owned was an enslaved woman named Joyce Heth. And the claim that his friend asserted to Barnum was that Joyce Heth was an enslaved person, and at the time in 1836, she was 161 years old. On top of that, she was also the caretaker of an infant George Washington. So she had very much outlived Washington, Jefferson, all of the founding fathers who had died much earlier. I think George Washington died 1790s. Um, so she was George Washington's nursemaid. This is a highly dubious claim, and Barnum probably didn't believe it. However, he finds out that Joyce Heth was being displayed in Philadelphia. She was being displayed at the Philadelphia Masonic Hall, and she was attracting insanely large crowds. Think about it, though. You have the opportunity to, one, see somebody that is 161 years old. Most people that that do get up there in age, honestly, the life expectancy of older people, it's about the same as today. If you get out of childhood diseases, you're doing pretty good. If some other kind of thing doesn't kill you, you know, your actually life expectancy is in your 80s, 87, 89, somewhere in there. So as long as something doesn't take you out artificially, I guess, before then, some kind of disease or accident or something, your life expectancy is about the same. Um, so, um, but you get to go and see this person that is 161 years old. That's a wild claim. But also, this person, oh my gosh, this person cared for as an infant the father of our country. That's a pretty wild thing to go see. Uh, so, um, this is a super rare opportunity to go and see, this enslaved person that took care of George Washington. Wow, that's some super cool stuff. So, now the friend of Barnum said that he owned part of a share in Joyce Heth, and he wanted out of the business, and he was interested in selling her. But man, she was getting a ton of press. A lot of people were coming to go and see her at the Philadelphia Masonic Hall. The line was stretched around the block to come in and get a glimpse of this woman. So she is absolutely a money maker. Um, Now, like I said, supposedly Barnum probably didn't believe the story, but that doesn't matter. The fact is, a lot of people believed it enough to at least pay a quarter and come and see her. And so, also the owners, the several people that owned Miss Heth, produced some paperwork showing that the Washington family purchased a Joyce Heth when she was 51 years old for 30 pounds. So you do have, hey, this is an African American woman named Joyce Heth. They bought an African American woman named Joyce Heth. It's got to be the same person. There's no way that this really old African American woman, we didn't just change her name or anything like that. It's inconceivable. So, now, poor old Miss Heth, she had no teeth. She was blind. One of her arms and both of her legs was paralyzed. Basically, what they would do is they would bring her in the morning and they would put her on this little couch, and she would talk a little bit about George Washington, and that was about what she did. Phineas purchases her completely. From all the other owners as well, purchases her outright for $1,000. He takes her back to New York City and puts her on display. And he puts posters up everywhere. You've got to get the attention of the public to come and see Miss Heth. And so he puts posters up about this all over the place. He also invites the press. If you're a member of the press, you can come and see Joyce Heth for free. Well, this is free advertising because these reporters are going to come in and see her, and they want to sell newspapers, so they're going to write about her in the newspaper, and then that's going to sell newspapers for them. It also gets the public interested, and so everybody wins. Um, and like I said, people here again, people flock to the show. Barnum, just like the other guys, are going to charge 25 cents to see Miss Heth. Um, and the lines stretch around the building. He keeps her on display for 2 weeks in New York City. That's it. 2 week show. She's brought out 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Like I said, she is just sitting on a couch, and she'll talk a little bit about baby George Washington. In 2 weeks, he made $1,500 a week. So he made, over the course of those 2 weeks, he makes $3,000. He triples his money. Um, and does his 2 week show, and then hey, okay, the crowds are kind of thinning out. It's time to move on. He takes her up to Rhode Island. This is where it gets. It was like wow before, but this is where he's going to put a little bit more spin on it and make it even wilder. When he gets up to Rhode Island, though, Rhode Island is very, very much an abolitionist state. Most of the people in Rhode Island are very, very much abolitionist. New York's kind of an anti-slavery, and it's got some abolitionists, but they're not super, super hardcore, absolutely dead set about, trying to do something about the slavery movement. Rhode Island is a little bit different. They're very much more active in their efforts. And so the ministers up in Rhode Island absolutely protest this. How in the heck are you doing this stuff? You're bringing an enslaved person into Rhode Island, and you're making money off of her. That's not at all right. And the whole legality of this thing about Barnum taking an enslaved person into New York and into Rhode Island, uh, that's a little bit questionable on if he's able to do this legally or not. I kind of suspect that Miss Heth is so elderly, and he is absolutely actually feeding her and stuff. There's not a whole lot of protest, and also a lot of people are just interested in it, so they're willing to kind of overlook that she's an enslaved person in a free state. So uh, but the people of Rhode Island, though, the ministers there especially, are very much going to oppose this and encourage their congregations to not go and patronize this man who is making money off of an enslaved person. That is not at all acceptable. We, as Rhode Islanders, and you guys, as my congregation, are not going to benefit the institution of slavery. And so the ministers really admonish their congregants not to go and see this. And Barnum gets out ahead of it. He's a really kind of a quick dude, and he gets out of gets on this quickly and reacts to it. And he says, "No, no, 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 no! You have got it all wrong. Miss Heth is not an enslaved woman. She's actually free, and she was enslaved at one time, but I have freed her, and I am actually an abolitionist." And he also argues that what we're actually doing here is we're traveling around the North, and I'm displaying her and stuff like that. But I'm actually just working with her. I'm helping her to make all this money. All this money is hers. What she's doing is she's trying to raise a lot of money to purchase her grandchildren out of slavery. And so if you go to this show and if you go and see Miss Heth, you're actually helping the freedom movement to get people out of slavery. And so you guys being all abolitionists, you really should want to come and see Miss Heth because you're helping to free people. And that works. It absolutely works. It turns it around. The people of Rhode Island, their ministers at that point are going to urge their congregations to go and see Miss Heth. And so he rescued that story. Supposedly, one minister stopped by to see Miss Heth, and he gave Barnum an extra $10. It only costs a quarter to see Miss Heth, but this guy gives Barnum an extra $10 to for the cause of freeing her grandchildren. Barnum supposedly used it on oysters and champagne that night for dinner. So oysters are delicious, but I'm not sure he should have done that. So he takes her down to Boston, does the exact same thing, displays her down in Boston, gets a whole heck of a lot of attention. In Boston, he showed her for about 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, the crowds start to die off because, the people that wanted to come and see her have come and seen her. It's kind of a less return on investment to try to keep playing her up and stuff like that. So Barnum does something else. When he gets to Boston and the crowds start dying off, he starts writing anonymous letters to the newspaper. This is not a real person. He claims in these newspapers that she is actually not even a human being. He says that she is just an automaton, sort of an early version of a robot, which robots aren't existing right now, but he claims that she's an automaton and she's really just a bunch of springs covered with India rubber. And so she's a very dark complected woman, so the India rubber is really, really dark and wrinkly and stuff like that. And you kind of poke Miss Heth and she'll kind of wiggle, but that's just the springs and stuff. And so he writes these anonymous letters to the press claiming that this whole thing is a hoax and this is not even a real person. And the crowds come back because you may have paid your quarter thinking that, oh my gosh, this is this really, really old woman we saw. And then you want to, did I actually get tricked by that? Did they actually fool me? I've got to go back and check this out to see if I actually did, you know, fall for a bunch of springs covered with India rubber and thinking it was an old woman. And so the crowds come back. And so he makes a lot of money off of that second wave of people. Um, Unfortunately for Barnum, at least, I don't know if Miss Heth how she felt about the whole situation, but Miss Heth died in 1836. So Barnum himself was out money. I'm not sure if Miss Heth felt like that. Hey, this is the time to go. It's all right. I'm going to move on. I don't know how she felt about that, but she died in 1836. I almost made her an extra 100 years old. Uh, so the money maker of the show is gone. What could we do? So Barnum is going to make this worse, and you're like, wait, how does he make it worse? He does. He promises the public that he is going to have a surgeon conduct an autopsy to confirm Miss Heth's age. Uh, and Well, you could do that privately and you could figure that out, but if we do it in the public and we sell tickets to a live autopsy, we can make some money, right? So, yeah. So, now you can only do this once, so it's more expensive. Barnum sells those tickets for 50 cents each, and over 1,500 people show up for this live event autopsy of Joyce Heth. So a surgeon examines her. He conducts this autopsy by the state of her organs and other stuff. Know if I don't know. People have like tree rings. You kind of cut off one of their legs. And 80 years old. I don't know how that works, but I'm guessing though, seriously, that you can maybe tell roughly by the state of the internal. I don't know. I don't know how that works. But anyway, this surgeon dissects Miss Heth and he determines that she was about 75 or 80 years old. She was not 161. She was about half that, but hey, that's actually doing pretty good in a time period with, no antibiotics or anything like that. And people are kind of doing all kinds of quack medicine stuff, which they didn't know any better, but they are.